Hello, welcome back to the Thomas Fitch Sports Show. I'm Thomas Fitch. Today we have another episode of the Texas Longhorn Recap. We're talking about Texas's 38-7 win over Baylor, who is now 0-8. Texas moves to 4-4, 2 games away from being bowl eligible. And we're going to break down offensive performances. Again, another slow start. Defense keeps rolling. And we will go into college football playoffs. So, let's start off with the offense. And really quick, because it's Halloween tomorrow, I do want to show y'all my costume. I'm dressed up as Texas offense in the first quarter. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, so for those of y'all listening to the podcast, I've currently moved out of screen. The reason I have done that is because I'm invisible. I am not showing up just like the Texas offense in the first quarter and first half. So, little joke. But Texas, again, for a large majority of the first half, only led 7-0. It's taken a while to get the offense to develop. And some of that is just slowly wearing down the defense. And again, 38-7, that's not a bad 38 points is not a bad offensive performance, but it's taking too long. And that's why we lost to Oklahoma State. That's why we lost to Oklahoma. That's why we lost to USC and Maryland, even Maryland. Every game we've lost, we have started very poorly, especially in the first quarter, and we need to work on that. Denbeck's got to find a way to get the guys coming out hot and scoring quick. If we want to have a shot at, not necessarily winning a bowl game, but at least having a shot to win games at TCU, at West Virginia, the tougher 2 games left on our schedule coming up over the next 2 weeks. So overall in the offense, the offensive line struggled some more. However, with this struggle, with Buechele having 12 guys in his face every play, he had a very average game, I would say. He ended up being 27 of 34, 256 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and it wasn't a bad performance. It was a game manager performance, I felt like, from him. He showed he's an accurate quarterback. He has that, but it's against a bad team in Baylor, and it's just when he's in the big games, he hasn't done what's needed to do to win. Ellinger has done that, even though he hasn't won the games. Against USC, he had a clutch drive at the end of the game that got us into overtime. Against Kansas State, he won the game for us. Against OU, a good comeback. Against Oklahoma State, besides the interception. So it's an interesting debate to look at. Well, Buechele's played decent in the games he's played, but I think looking to the future, Ellinger is the future, so that's one reason to get him the start. The second, Ellinger just has certain intangibles. Even though I would say Buechele, as of right now, is a better quarterback, is a better passer, Ellinger does have better legs and just a better feel of the pocket. But even though overall Buechele is a better quarterback right now, I think Ellinger has the intangibles, and that's why if he's healthy, again, he has to be cleared from concussion protocol, but if he's healthy, and I feel like there's a good chance he'll get cleared. If he can get cleared in the OU game, there's a good chance he can get cleared going up against TCU. I don't know if that process is good or not, but I think he can get cleared. So I think he should and will be taking the start against TCU and against West Virginia if he stays healthy. You look at the rushing game, there was more commitment to the run on the part of Tim Beck, and for the most part, I would say it paid off. Overall, the team had 35 rushes for 171 yards, but Tennille Carter was the leading rusher. He had 15 carries, 70 yards, 1 touchdown. Young had the other freshman. He had a good game. He had 7 carries for 60 yards and a touchdown. And Buechele, 9 carries for 42 yards, but the majority of those yards was on his 28-yard touchdown scaper. The 2 people who didn't get the ball, the experienced veterans, or didn't get the ball much, Warren had 2 carries for 3 yards, and Porter did not touch the ball once. But we finally saw we're going back-to-back plays running the ball, and overall, there was just more runs. 35 rushes is a fairly high total compared to what we have been doing in the past. The other thing that where we really struggled, especially in the first half, was the short yardage package, which is something that we've struggled with all year. You pick up 7-8 yards on a first down, and then 2nd and 2, nothing's doing. 3rd and 2, nothing's doing. Sometimes we'll go for it on 4th down, where you run Ellinger, try to do the 18-wheeler package with, the little white guy Ellinger, and he loses a yard. So Tim Beck's got to find a much better way to get a first down on those short. I mean, I get that Warren hasn't been running great, but he is still 6'2", 250 pounds. He is massive. Just give him the ball. I don't care if he's getting 1 yard a carry on 2nd and 2. Give him the ball 3 times, averaging 1 yard a carry. There's a good chance he'll get you the first down. Just have him fall forward and he gets it to you. So, or run a short little slant pattern, something easy. It's too complicated, and it's such a simple thing, and such a bummer when you can have a good first down play and then you just get stalled. So that was one way offensively where I think we really needed to improve. And going back to the O-line, it wasn't, again, you got to put things in perspective because you are playing 0-8 Baylor. However, the O-line was not bad. They really weren't. I'm not exactly sure how many sacks Shane took. He had only 2 sacks, but he had a lot of hurries, a lot of times scrambling around the pocket. But 2 sacks, and there weren't a ton of holding penalties either. So 2 sacks with such a inexperienced offensive line is very impressive, I think. And I think it just shows the growth. And you have to give props to Tim Beck and Herman for getting this crew ready to play. And again, I get it's against a Baylor team, but still an impressive performance for a very depleted offensive line. And I will say, when you look at how bad the offensive line is, that does put into perspective quarterback performances. It's hard, no matter who you put in the game. Doesn't matter if you have Shane starting, doesn't matter if you have Sam starting. They're going to be running for their lives every play. They're going to have guys in their face, especially when you start to get to better teams like TCU and West Virginia. That's going to happen. And so regardless of who starts, they're going to play a lot worse than they would with a good offensive line, and it's just going to be a struggle for them. So as far as that's concerned, I don't think it matters as much who you have in quarterback because they're just going to get beaten up upon all game. Let's move on to the defense because the defense was again impressive, kept us in this game. There was a large part of the whole first quarter and a decent amount of the second quarter when we were still just up 7-0, and one big play from Baylor, and it's a tie game. But the defense did a good job of holding Baylor, keeping them. You look at rushing yards, 37 attempts for 31 yards, and granted, that's counting sacks, but overall was not bad. They had 2 quarterbacks that were going back and forth. Smith was 4 for 11, 37 yards. Brewer, 17 of 27, 181 yards. But not much was happening. They only scored 7 points. And so you look at that, this defense is, I think it's hard to look at Baylor and say we've improved, going from holding Oklahoma State to 10 points, and then you hold Baylor to 7 points. However, or 10 points in regulation with Oklahoma State. However, it is still an impressive performance, regardless of who you play. And you look at this as a Baylor team who scored 41 against Oklahoma. So clearly this defense is doing things and has to be considered one of the most impressive defenses in the nation right now. And one of the better defenses that Texas has had in a while. We are finally consistently making tackles. We are forcing turnovers. We are able to get off the field on 3rd down. So that is impressive. That is something we have struggled with since 2009, really, in that championship run. And so it's good to get back to that. It's a shame when you look at guys like Malik, who is just having a career year. He had 8 total tackles, 6 solo, 1.5 sacks, and 2.5 tackle for losses. But he's everywhere, and it's a shame that he'll be in the NFL next year, more than likely. He's been given a variety of grades for where he's going to be drafted. I've heard anywhere from top 10 to second and third round. Regardless, all the scouts see him as a very athletic, just raw talent, raw skill linebacker. So there's a good chance that he has 4 games left with the university. But a lot of Holton Hill, who I'm sure he'll be at the top of draft boards next year, who's still a sophomore, but he's all over the field and very impressive in pass coverage. You'll notice the quarterbacks don't throw to him much because he is such a lockdown corner and he is such a good he's one of the best open field tacklers I've seen ever, I think, in Texas football history. Elliott had another interception. He had 7 solo tackles. But one thing that really impresses me is just up and down, everybody's performing on the defense. Everybody's getting involved. Hager had a good game. He had 5 tackles. PJ Locke, who was in an ankle boot today, which worries me a little bit, but 5 total tackles. I mean, there's just a long list of guys. Gary Johnson, who's playing really well. He had 6 tackles. McCullough had a good sack. Poona Ford only had 1 tackle, but he's still making his presence known. So up and down the list, the guys on defense are getting things done, which is really good to see. And I think one thing, Oklahoma State just but put up a ton of points against West Virginia last week. And when you compare that to West Virginia, who has at the beginning of the year was considered a very good defense, to now you look at Oklahoma State, they put up 50 on West Virginia. 50 on a team who's supposed to have a very good defense, compared to us who gave up 10. So that, you have to look at that and just say, this is a largely, just an incredible defense. Incredible defense, because Oklahoma State, except for our game, averaging about 50 points a game, and then they drop off to 10. That is spectacular. So some takeaways. It was a game we should have won no matter what. It's Baylor. They're 0-8. And granted, it's an improved. This is not the Baylor team that lost to Liberty. As fun as it is to say that they lost to Liberty, they lost to USD, they've lost to everybody, but especially Liberty. Always fun to mention. However, they're 0-8, regardless of how many points they put up on Oklahoma, regardless of how close they play K-State and West Virginia. They are still 0-8. It was a game we should have won. And so 38-7 is a respectable score, but it would have been nice to see us start off faster, because that is something we've struggled with this whole year. I think you look at the remaining 4 games. We have TCU next week on the road, West Virginia after that on the road, or maybe Kansas might be before that at home. And then you just have, I believe it goes TCU, then Kansas at home, then West Virginia on the road, and then finishing off Tech at home. All of those are very winnable, and I think you see what Oklahoma State did, putting up 50 points against a decent defense in West Virginia. I think that gives us good hope for winning that game. But TCU, I think we have a chance of winning. I would not say, if I was making a prediction, I would say we finish 7-5 on the year, because it is, even when you have an incredible defense, it is still very tough to win when the offensive performance is just not there at all. So it'll be interesting to see. I think TCU will be a good game next week to get a feel for the defense going up against a very overall. TCU is just a very balanced team. I don't think they're exceptional in one category, but they're a solid defense, solid offense, solid everywhere. So that, I would say, if I was predicting one loss, it would be there. It's on the road. So that's going to be a tough game. But I like our chances against West Virginia, even though it's on the road in Morgantown. I like those chances. Kansas, we're not going to lose again to Kansas. Hot take. We will not lose to Kansas this year. And then I think Tech is a good chance we could win on the road. All right, sorry about that. We are back with part two of the Thomas Fitch Sports Show, finishing up Texas football recap and Texas's 38-7 victory over Baylor. We're going over takeaways. The final takeaway. This was probably the part of the game that really hurt me, or just maybe the most disappointed. Is it's like the coaches don't want Michael Dixon to win the Heisman anymore. You know, at the end of the game, there's about 7.5 minutes left. We're up 31-7 on the 40-yard line, like 4th and 2, and we punted. And I'm like, if you want, Michael Dixon is an incredible punter, the best punter ever in Texas history. I'm just going to say it now. I think he's going to go on and have an incredible NFL career. But the problem is we got stalled around midfield so many times that he was having the best he could do a lot of times was a 50-yard punt or a 40-yard punt. And your goal is not to kick into the end zone. Your goal is to get as close to the goal line. So that really hurt his average. He's now down to, 48.4 yards per punt. And he is a guy who, if you watch him, you know he can punt it 60 yards every time, but when he's having to punt from the 50, having to punt from the 40, it's bringing down his average. Bringing down his average of, give him the Ray Guy now, but I want this guy on a flight to New York. One second. Let's take a look at the stats of some of the Heisman frontrunners. So Saquon Barkley, he has 0 punts for 0 yards, averaging, get this, 0 yards per punt. That means Michael Dixon is literally averaging 48.4 yards more per punt than Saquon Barkley is. And somehow Saquon's the runner for the Heisman, and I don't hear Michael Dixon's name mentioned anywhere. I mean, that is absolutely terrible. And the exact same stats for Bryce Love and for Baker Mayfield. So you can't tell me that Michael Dixon does not have the resume to be in the Heisman race. You can't tell me that, because this guy is incredible and is going to be drafted at some point soon. Probably, I don't think he'll be a free agent who has to be signed. I think he's going to get drafted because he has one of the strongest legs. I mean, you look at I looked over the weekend at the NFL. I think the biggest average per kick was like 54 yards a kick, but his average puts him about 5th overall if he was in the NFL right now of yards per punt. Like, that's incredible as a college athlete. And you look at all these guys' farthest kicks, it's 65, 66. Dixon's doing that each game. So, just shout out my guy. Come on, Heisman. Send him to New York. If the people can get behind him, I know there's no fan vote for Heisman, but just a little inside. I don't know if anybody knows this, but if you win the Heisman, you get a vote. So track down every Heisman winner slide into the DMs and be like, you better vote for Michael Dixon because he's averaging 48.4 yards more per punt than Saquon Barkley. So just get that information out. This is something that, it's a representative democracy. We the people can't vote, but we the people can influence and have a big influence in who wins the Heisman. Finally, we got a little bit of time left because tomorrow, Tuesday night on ESPN, I think I can say that. I don't know if I'm breaking copyright laws. Hopefully we're good. Anyways, tomorrow night, the college football playoff rankings will be released. So, in honor of that, I'm going to give my top 4. Like I have been doing, I'll break it down for you. If you have any complaints, just come with me and I'll tell you why you're wrong. Very simple. Number 1, Alabama. And everybody is getting on Alabama because they only have 1 win over a team with a winning record. They haven't really beat anybody good. But 2 things. 1, I think people are discounting the Florida State win. It was a Florida State win where the majority of the game, they still had Francois. And I think this is a Florida State team who's been through a lot. You lose your star quarterback. You go through this stuff with the Hurricane, and they just have no momentum, and they're just trending downhill. I don't think it was the top 4 ranked team that they were ranked. Florida State, I don't think the team week 1 was a top 5 team. However, I think they were still a decent team then, and it hurts when you lose your star quarterback. So don't discount that one. And secondly, not A&M, Alabama beat A&M. That's their one team that they've beaten with a winning record. But aside for A&M, Alabama has been blowing their opponents away. It's very similar to Texas's national championship winning year in 2005, where you look at, they beat Colorado in the Big 12 championship 70-3, and they were just destroying teams. That is what it's very reminiscent of to me. The A&M win isn't as good, but it's a A&M team who will be likely making it to a bowl game, even though they got killed by Mississippi State. Go Dogs, only for 1 week. Number 2, Georgia. I think Georgia just belongs here. They're undefeated. They have that Notre Dame win, keeps looking better and better and better every week. And we're going to get to Notre Dame really quick, believe it or not. So I think they belong here. And I'm really excited for the Alabama-Georgia matchup that we are going to get. Yep, we are. Hot take. We are going to get in the SEC championship. Then number 3, Notre Dame. That's right. I hate to say it because I want Texas to be back before Notre Dame. But Texas did beat Notre Dame last year, so following some train of something Texas is better than them, find it for me somehow. They have the best loss, or maybe second best loss, but arguably the best loss in college football. They lost to Georgia by 1 point, second game of the season. They have probably one of the better schedules because they beat Michigan State, who is now ranked. They destroyed USC 2 weeks ago, who is a very solid fundamental team. They destroyed NC State. They put up 35 points on a very, very stubborn NC State defense, who actually goes to Clemson next week. Watch for an upset there. And they still have Miami and Stanford left. So they very easily, with one loss, if they win out, will be in the college football playoff. A, because they're a big team, and we know they like to pick big teams. I'm sorry, they do. And B, because they have the most complete resume of any team in college football right now. Even with that one loss, they have a much better resume than Alabama and Georgia. Well, Georgia beat them, but anybody else. Number 4, I am putting Clemson ahead of Ohio State. And it's a close one. I think by the end of the year we'll have it sorted out. So I'm not super worried about this. But the thing is, Clemson, I think overall Clemson might be a better team. I think compared to Ohio State, I think, Ohio State, they have a good loss in Oklahoma, maybe. But I think Oklahoma will be a 1 or 2 loss team at the end of the year. A good loss in Oklahoma and a good win over Penn State. However, you look at Penn State. Who has Penn State played? They beat Michigan, but Michigan's now not ranked. So you look at, and I think the Big Ten could be hurting from scheduling. Ohio State, granted they have the Oklahoma loss, but they haven't played anybody else ranked other than Penn State. Penn State, other than Ohio State, hasn't played anybody else ranked. And Wisconsin, who they're not even in my top 6. They might be. I think they are. But they're not in my top 4. They're undefeated. At this point, if they were to win out and go to the Big Ten championship game, that would be the first time they're playing a ranked opponent all year. So that scheduling conundrum could come back to bite them. So obviously Clemson 4 and then Ohio State 5, but right on the border. I don't think it matters right now because I think, well, I don't know that, if both teams went out, I don't know who goes ahead. There's a chance that Ohio State goes ahead because they have a better loss and they'd still have to win the Big Ten championship over what could be an undefeated or a one-loss ranked Wisconsin team who looks to have a good control over their side of the conference. So that at the end of the day, if both teams win out, there's a good chance that I think Ohio State gets the nod over Clemson. But right now, both teams have fairly similar resumes. I think both teams are in conferences that started off hot, but now are kind of residing. However, Clemson has a big game against NC State next week. Like I was saying, if they can win that, I think that'll kind of solidify their resume as a solid team. And then six position doesn't matter, but I think I would put Wisconsin in that just solely because they're undefeated. But you can really throw Wisconsin. You can throw Penn State in there with one loss. You can throw Oklahoma in there. And I'm not sure if the Big 12 will get a team in there. I think TCU losing to Iowa State hurt that. But I think because you have a lot of teams, you have Iowa State's turning out to be good. TCU's will finish the year ranked. Oklahoma State will likely finish the year ranked. OU will finish the year ranked. You might get a West Virginia or a Tech finishing the year in the top 25. I don't think Texas does, but there's a chance if Texas wins out that they will finish in the top 25. So the Big 12 doesn't have all the they aren't consolidated in the top 5, top 10, but I think there are other, aside from Baylor and Kansas, and even Baylor's had some close games, there are no easy games in the Big 12. So I think that's one thing that works to Oklahoma's favor. If they win out, they have a good win over Ohio State. Their loss to Iowa State keeps looking better and better every week. They have a good resume. They have a very good chance, I think, to push their way up. Other one-loss teams, Miami has one loss, but I don't really buy into them. They barely escaped 2 weekends in a row. First against UConn. Last weekend, I'm even blanking on who it was, but the point is there are a lot of one-loss teams still in it, but when I look at teams who have the most likely chance to win, I look at teams who have been most dominant and teams who have the most complete resumes. And that's why I think a team like Oklahoma has a better chance than one-loss Penn State or even maybe an undefeated Wisconsin to make it in. But again, they need help from maybe Ohio State or Clemson losing that. Well, that is going to do it for us today over at the Thomas Fitch Sports Show. Thanks for joining me. We will be back next year. Next week with a recap of the TCU game. Have a very happy Halloween. Stay safe. Check your kids' candy for high fructose corn syrup, which can lead to diabetes. Just kidding. Let your kids eat what they want. Anyways, happy Halloween. Thanks for joining us today. See y'all next week.